Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. A ton of you guys have been asking me to make a rapid fire rogue build, so here you guys go. As you can see, the build does an absolutely insane amount of damage, and I kind of went out of my way to make the build extremely fast, so you can just blast through maps as fast as humanly possible, leveling up very quickly, and also just having an absolute blast doing it. Rapid fire is probably the second best option when it comes to rogue core skills other than twisting blades because of the sheer damage potential that it has. And previously, the biggest problem with rapid fire wasn't actually the amount of damage that it does, it was simply just its ability to clear an entire screen because its damage was mainly single target. But now with the new Malignant Hearts, we can convert all that single target damage into AoE, so we can benefit drastically from the sheer amount of damage that we're dealing and just blow up the entire screen as a result, which is just fantastic. It kind of like fixed a lot of the problems that I had with rapid fire. And like I said, I kind of went out of my way to make the build extremely quick, so I'm going to go over all of those things with you guys. And honestly, I just think this is a fantastic build overall if you're not really interested in playing with twisting blades, but you want something that is going to be still very strong. Before I get into the build, I want to show you guys today's sponsor, Diablo.trade, which is a brand new trading platform for Diablo 4. All you got to do is just type Diablo.trade into your browser, and boom, you are greeted with the website. Brand new, just came out, and it's basically the perfect way to not only sell items, but also buy items for gold, of course. No RMT or anything like that involved, purely just for gold. So for example, if I wanted to find like a perfect crossbow for my rogue or even sell something and make some gold, all I'd have to do is just link my Battle.net account, which you can see that I did here. It takes literally 10 seconds, and I can very easily just filter for something. So for example, I want to find a crossbow on my rogue, I can just filter, and then boom, I can just look at all these different crossbows here. And this one is actually particularly good. It has dexterity, crit damage, all stats. I just roll the damage injured to vulnerable damage, and that is a fantastic stat stick for my rogue. So if I wanted to buy this, all I'd have to do is just click contact. I just add this guy over on Battle.net, and then once he accepts me, I just say, hey, I'm looking to buy your cutscene for 10 million gold. Boom, that guy just made 10 mil, and I just got a perfect crossbow. If I wanted to sell an item, which is a fantastic way to make gold for items that you're not using, I particularly have this amazing crossbow with vuln damage, dexterity, core skill. Fantastic thing that you could buy. I'll just click Windows Shift S, take a little screenshot here, go back to Diablo Trade, list the item, and then it says here just drag and drop. I'll just copy and paste the image there, and then it's actually going to automatically populate all the stats here, so I don't even have to go out of my way to put everything in. It just grabbed it for me, and then I'll just say, okay, how much do I want to sell this for? And this is probably worth like 40 mil, honestly, because it's pretty good. So I'll just post it for 40 mil, and all I got to do is click submit, confirm that the above information is correct. Yeah, all that seems pretty good. Confirm. And boom, then I listed the item, and hopefully somebody is looking to buy it. Literally took 10 seconds, and I could make like 40 million gold in 10 seconds because that's a really good crossbow. So if you have a bunch of items just laying around that are particularly well statted, this is a fantastic way to just make an ungodly amount of gold, but also, again, to actually search for some perfect items. As you can see, it's posted right here, and somebody will probably just add me and then pick that up. They're also doing a Steam Deck giveaway, so all you got to do is just head over to the website and then click on the Steam Deck giveaway, boom, and then you just join their Discord, and then you're able to enter the giveaway. As you can see, you just follow all the steps here. So fantastic way to not only trade items, sell items, get a crap ton of gold, but also, I mean, even win yourself a free Steam Deck. So big thanks to Diablo.trade for sponsoring today's video, and make sure to check them out. All right, let's just jump into the build. As always, there will be a build link in the description for those of you guys that want to be able to just easily reference and copy and paste it. First off, I'll quickly mention the Malignant Hearts that we want to use with the build. Barber is by far the most important one. If you guys have played it all this season, you know that Barber is very good. I'm not going to talk too much about all of its caveats, quirks, weird things. I've made separate videos on that. Feel free to watch those if you want to learn more about the Barber Heart. But the most important thing to know is that basically when you deal damage to one enemy, all that damage that you deal will be stored up over a period of time, and then all that damage will erupt and kill everything. So basically, you're turning single target damage into an AoE explosion. And something that's very good about this AoE explosion is that it actually always counts as shadow damage. So you basically have infinite energy via consuming shadows, because anytime you just get a kill, boom, you just infinitely generate energy. Also, it's just amazing because it just seems to increase your damage by a number that seems a little higher than it should be, but I'm not complaining. It drastically increases your damage, and it basically makes rapid fire go from a single target spell into an AoE spell, which is the biggest problem that it had. So Barber Heart is pretty much mandatory for the build. You can guarantee farm these with the video that I posted, but that is going to get patched. So make sure you farm out multiple of these. You want to have a 4-second roll, because anytime that you deal damage, you don't actually have to wait the 2 to 4 seconds. All you have to do is just deal the amount of damage that that mob has in health, and then the explosion will happen prematurely. So ideally, you want a 4-second roll for any time that you're fighting like a very tanky elite or something, so you get that extra stored damage stacking even higher. For our other hearts, we want to be using, I forget what this one is called, Cage Heart of Revenge, I think. Basically, just 20% of the damage that you otherwise would have taken is suppressed. You could also use Trickery, which spawns like a little decoy guy that taunts mobs. That one's particularly helpful as well. That's kind of up to personal preference. And the last one, you just want to be the Tempting Fate, which literally just gives you extra crit damage, which is very good. We have very, very high crit chance with this build, so getting extra crit damage is amazing for us. With this build, we're going to be playing with combo points because Rapid Fire doesn't really do that much damage when you're not using combo points. This drastically increases the damage output. Not only does it give you literally about 50%, maybe closer to like 40% extra damage straight up, but it also doubles the amount of arrows that you're firing, so you get literally over double the damage just by using combo points. Without combo points, the damage output feels a little bit weak, and there's a lot of different ways that we can get just pretty much free damage by throwing in a puncture here and there. So that's going to drastically increase our damage output, and I also stack a crazy amount of attack speed so that we can build up those combo points very quickly. Obviously, it's a rapid fire build, so we're using rapid fire. I use dash for the movement speed, and I do not have shadow step. The reason that I don't have shadow step is because rapid fire still has a little bit of a problem with AoE clear, so sometimes you'll jump into a massive pack and you don't just get to blow it up instantaneously. A lot of the time you will, but sometimes you want to jump into that pack and you kind of need some form of crowd control. So having Poison Trap is very good for just giving you kind of like a safety net when you jump into that pack. However, now we don't have a unstoppable effect. So I like Dash for just the movement speed, just flying through the map. But every once in a while, if you get crowd controlled, you're kind of just SOL, and it's not a great time. So feel free to take off Dash and put on Shadow Step, or even take off Poison Trap and put on Shadow Step instead. I kind of swap between these two, just depending upon the dungeon that I'm doing. Is entirely up to you. And then we have both imbuements. Cold Imbuement just gives us a crazy amount of single target damage, which is very good. Anytime we walk into an elite, we can literally just guarantee one burst them as a result of using Cold Imbuement because it gives us so much extra damage. And then Shadow Imbuement is amazing for just giving us overall extra AoE clear. If you wanted to take one of these imbuements off in favor of Shadow Step, I'd probably take off Cold Imbuement, but then your single target damage will certainly suffer as a result of losing one of your imbuement skills. Let's hop into the skill tree. So we're going to be using Puncture with Vulnerable. The Vulnerable isn't going to apply that much. It will every once in a while, but the problem is Barber kind of negates it applying, so most of your vulnerable application is going to be from Exploit actually applying. But regardless, it still does work here and there, and it's just 1 point, so it may as well. 3 into Sturdy and 3 into Siphoning Strikes. Siphoning Strikes is really not going to proc all that much because of the way that Barber works, and just because they nerfed it so significantly. But you have a lot of extra skill points with this build, so you may as well just get the bit of survivability there. And then I max out Rapid Fire, and we get the Advanced Rapid Fire for the extra 30% increased crit damage, which we're actually going to have permanently, which I'll talk about in the gameplay section. But mainly, a result of using our boots, we pretty much have this up permanently, and we actually don't need the energy from improved Rapid Fire because we get pretty much infinite energy just with using Consuming Shadows. Stutter Step I like because I like the movement speed. I went out of my way to get as much movement speed as humanly possible with this build. But if you don't want that, you could go 3 points into Agile for just a bit of dodge chance, which is a bit of supplemental survivability. Honestly, not really necessary though. 3 into Weapon Mastery, very good. And then Dash with the crit damage and the slow here. It really doesn't do that much, but may as well. And then Poison Trap with the knockdown guarantee, which is really nice, as well as the 30% chance to reset one of our imbuement skills, which we have 2 of in the form of Shadow Imbuement with Blended, and then Cold Imbuement with Mix, so we deal 20% increased damage against crowd controlled. But if the enemy is frozen, which they almost always immediately get frozen, it doubles the effect of this, and the effect of this is also going to be nearly doubled again because we're using Corruption on a 2-hander. So anytime that we fight a frozen enemy paired with Frigid Finesse, we deal nearly triple the damage to them. Because Corruption is going to benefit from Mixed, we're getting the Frigid Finesse, and we're also getting stuff in our Paragon Board. So that is just a crazy amount of burst damage. We can literally walk up to an elite and just kill them in one burst of a rapid fire, pretty much as a result of using Cold Imbuement. And again, all that damage to one enemy is being stored up and then exploding and killing everything. So that's a ton of damage for us. Precision Imbuement for the crit chance, because a lot of the time we're using an Imbuement skill, so that's just 9% crit. And then Trap Mastery, 12% crit anytime we use a Poison Trap. It's not active like a crazy amount because we're not like spamming our Poison Trap, but Poison Trap is a pretty low cooldown. You burst an elite or something, you have the extra crit chance. That's pretty nice. And then Adrenaline Rush with Haste for the movement speed mainly. The attack speed you get every once in a while, but most of the time you're above maximum energy of 50%. So you mainly are getting this for the movement speed. If you feel like your movement speed is a little overkill, feel free to take that off and just go into agile or whatever else you want. So feel free to keep that in mind. And then for our key passive, we go with precision. This has kind of like a weird anti-synergy with the way that Barber works, but regardless, it still ends up being a pretty juicy bit of additional damage for us. And close quarters combat is just too much of a pain to actually proc. Same thing with momentum. So precision is pretty much a no-brainer for us here, just giving us extra damage overall. When it comes to our legendaries, there's a few different ways that you guys can set this up, but this is what I found to be particularly good for just optimizing damage as well as clear speed. I am very interested in just flying through the map as fast as possible. Typically, I hate using combo points because I don't like the playstyle of, waiting to do my damage. I want to just do my damage, do my damage, do my damage. So I went out of my way to get all the attack speed in the game so I could just spam my rapid fire as fast as humanly possible and just blast through the map, because I care a lot about speed. So that is how I kind of oriented the legendaries. So let's get into it. First off, with the crossbow, there's not anything crazy you can put on here that you're going to get too much value from by getting the double effect. So you could go with Edgemaster for a little bit more damage, but it's like 10% more on the crossbow. Who really cares, right? So personally, I go with Corruption. So basically, I only do this so that Cold Immunity just has way more value, and I always, anytime I see an elite, I 100% of the time can kill them in one rapid fire burst, because if I have to take 2 rapid fire bursts, it just slows down my clear speed. So I want to be able to one burst them. So having Corruption on the two-hander is really, really good for that. Some people like to use the rapid fire legendary on a two-hander. I don't think it has too much value. It will help you with your clear speed a little bit, but it ricochets to like a random target, right? So unless you're getting a lot of ricochets on that one target, because of the way Barber works, blah, 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 you just don't get too much value. Honestly, you could probably even play the build without the rapid fire legendary. It's not like insane. It is helpful. Feel free to use it on the two-hander if you prefer that, and then you just put Corruption on the amulet, but I don't really think it's all that necessary. Edgemasters on the amulet is great for just straight up extra damage. And then again, I do have the repeating just for a bit of extra clear, but honestly, it's not really anything insane. And then I actually am using double unique daggers here. You could easily make the argument that Ashiar's Conjar is bad, and instead of using Ashiar's Conjar, you would want to use the one legendary that just increases your attack speed with your basic skill, and honestly, that would be better. I was trying to find it. It's called the Rapid Aspect. You can get this to be 30% increased attack speed with your basic skill, and that is technically better than Ashiara's because you could then put it on like a sword that just has a ton of really good stats on it, like this one, for example, and then you don't have to use Ashiara's, which just has terrible stats. I don't have a good Rapid Aspect. I don't have a good roll. So I've just been using this. The thing about Rapid is it's only basic skills, but you actually don't care about the attack speed of your rapid fire itself because we are going to be animation canceling the rapid fire, which we'll talk more about later. So ideally, you want to get a sword with Rapid Aspect instead of Ashiara's, but until you get that, Ashiara's is okay. The stats on here just absolutely suck balls, so it's not ideal. And then we want Condemnation. Condemnation is amazing because we are using combo points, obviously, so we just want to be able to deal extra damage whenever we have 3 combo points stacked up. Keep in mind though, sometimes when you actually are playing with the build, you don't need 3 combo points in order to kill things. You only need like 1. So Condemnation sometimes doesn't have that much value because it doesn't do anything unless you have 3 combo points. But feel free to just keep that in mind. Kind of like a gameplay thing. Talk more about that later. Other legendaries you want is Accelerating Aspect, simply for the attack speed. Very, very nice there. And then you also want Expectant, which is amazing. Pretty much 30% increased damage all the time because ideally we are using our rapid fire at 3 combo points most of the time. When it comes to survivability stuff, I have cheats on here. This is actually probably not really that good, but the Dark Shroud thing doesn't really work with the crits with marksman skills because we're using the Barber Heart. So you kind of have a slot here where you can do like a utility aspect, you can do like Quickening Fog or something on like the chest, or you can just go for straight up defensive with cheats, which doesn't really proc that much because we are not using Penitent Greaves, we're using normal boots. We need to use normal boots because of the attacks reduce evades skill cooldown, which I'll talk about later. But this also gives us movement speed, which is really nice. Damage reduction from cheats is good. Disobedience is pretty much mandatory if you want to stay alive. And Might is also just damage reduction all the time, which is really, really strong for us. When it comes to the stats that we want on our gear, on our helmet, we want Ranks through Shadow Imbuement and Cold Imbuement to just buff their effectiveness. Cooldown reduction is really good, just reduce the cooldown on our imbuement skills, as well as getting total armor or max HP for some survivability. On the chest, you want damage reduction from close, DR, max HP, and armor percent, some variation of that. Same thing on the pants there. Pants, you can also get imbuement skill cooldown reduction, which is nice. You do lose a bit of defense in order to do it, but you get the reduced cooldown, so you pretty much always have an imbuement when you need it. The cooldowns being long is a little unfortunate, but because we're playing with combo points, you're not just spamming your rapid fire, so I'd say roughly 70% of your rapid fire skills are going to be taking advantage of an imbuement, but the more cooldown reduction you have, that'll get closer to 80 to 90%, and it really just depends on your clear speed. When it comes to your gloves, you want ranks through rapid fire, crit chance, attack speed, and then crit damage with imbued skills. On your pants, we already talked about that. On your boots, you want to have, the most important thing is getting attacks reduce evades cooldown by 0.9 seconds. The reason that you care about this is because basically anytime that you use your rapid fire, you want to be able to instantly dodge out of the rapid fire, and it's going to animation cancel it, so you're not sitting there just casting your rapid fire, which feels very clunky. So we're able to just constantly spam our dodge, but also we gain 30% increased crit damage after we evade. So we pretty much always have this 30% extra damage active just by using these boots, and it also drastically, makes the build way faster to play with because we don't have to sit there in the rapid fire animation. You could use Penitent Greaves for a little bit more damage via applying the chill and always getting damage versus crowd controlled, etc. And it was kind of a big thing for me to take Penitent Greaves off because I think they're so good, but I really just hated sitting in the animation and not being able to dodge all the time out of the rapid fire, and honestly this does just drastically increase the clear speed. When it comes to what rolls you want on here, movement speed is the single most important thing. Outside of that, damage reduction while injured is very good. You can get movement speed after killing an elite, which is really good as well. Energy cost reduction kind of blows. You don't really need it at all. You pretty much always have full energy with this build because of combo points and getting the extra energy with consuming shadows. So energy cost isn't a big thing. Dexterity is nice damage. You get dodge chance would be okay. It doesn't really matter that much. On the two-hander, you want dexterity, vulnerable damage, crit damage, and then crit damage with imbued skills or all stats is really good for you. And then you want condemnation or Ashiara's Conjar. And then if you were to replace Ashiara's with a rapid aspect and a normal weapon, you'd probably want a dagger for the attack speed. And then you would want to have exactly this roll here. Crit damage, vulnerable damage, dexterity, and crit damage with imbued skills would be ideal for you. Same thing with the rings. You want crit chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and crit damage with imbued skills. My rings unfortunately suck. Make sure to, at the very least, get vulnerable damage and crit chance, and these are always very easy to roll in there. When it comes to the amulet, oh my god, there's a crazy amount of stats that you could get on here that are particularly good for you. It's kind of just up to personal preference. At least when it comes to getting damage-oriented things, stuff that is very, very good for you is getting ranks to exploit, because enemies are pretty much permanently healthy when you actually deal damage to them via barber. So exploit is just a crazy amount of extra damage. Or you can get weapon mastery for extra crit damage when using a crossbow. That's very good. Or if you happen to be using a bow, just straight up damage to vulnerable enemies is really good as well. I have Frigid Finesse, which gives me a lot of damage when enemies are cold imbued, but outside of the cold imbuement, it's not really doing much for me. So I'd rather have exploit, to be honest with you, because it's just damage pretty much all the time for us. Outside of that, getting movement speed is really good for just clearing stuff faster. Getting imbuement skill cooldown reduction or just normal cooldown reduction so that you have more uptime on your imbuments. Getting damage reduction, armor, ranks to imbuement skills. There's so much stuff on the amulet. Honestly, I kind of like what I have. I like having a mix of damage reduction, movement speed, or cooldown reduction, and just straight up extra damage. It's kind of just up to personal preference. When it comes to the Paragon board, don't worry about it too much. Just literally copy paste from the description. But in the first board, I go with Ranger. If you're leveling up, you need to have Exploit in the second board, which there will be a leveling version and a level 100 version, so make sure to take advantage of that. But I just have Combat in here, and we get a lot of extra vulnerable damage and damage reduction from vulnerable. And then I go into Cunning Stratagem, so that anytime we use 3 combo points, we get an additional rapid fire arrow, which is really good for just extra damage. This is quite a point investment, but it ends up being worth it. I think you actually get 2 extra arrows, maybe even 3. I remember 100%, but I know that you get 10 arrows, so that's a lot of extra damage for us. And then I go into Cheap Shot. This isn't active all that much because we're not using Penitent Greaves anymore, but it does give you a bit of extra damage, and it's pretty low point investment to grab it. Some damage versus crowd controlled isn't always ideal, but we get a ton of damage to healthy here, and this is a very good board for control. So anytime we deal damage to enemies with the cold imbuement, we just deal way more damage to them. And then I go Tricks of the Trade, 25% increased damage almost all the time, get some damage reduction from close and damage to close. Max out the Turf Glyph here for extra damage to close and damage reduction. And then I leveled up Exploit for the extra vulnerable damage, but also the vulnerable application, which again pretty much needs to be in your second board if you're not level 100. I just have it up here because this is a strength heavy board, and I also like all the armor in here. Quickly, I'll go over some gameplay tips, and then I'll just show you guys some gameplay, and then I'll talk about my feelings about rapid fire versus twisting blades and how they compare. Real quickly, the most important thing to note is that when you're actually using rapid fire normally, your character gets stuck in the animation, which feels terrible, it's kind of slow, and not ideal. So what you can do is actually just rapid fire and instantaneously dodge out of it. Not only is this going to animation cancel, so you just don't have to waste all of your time sitting there waiting for the arrows to go off, it gives you so much more maneuverability, etc., but it also always gives you the 30% increased crit damage anytime that you evade. So you pretty much always have this extra damage active, as well as just massively increasing your clear speed because we are dodging all the time. And we get our dodge back always because anytime that we deal attacks, which is every single individual arrow or every single individual hit of puncture, we get back our dodge cooldown just by having these boots. So this is pretty much the whole reason that we use these boots. It drastically increases our clear speed. If you don't like doing this, I mean, feel free to just not, but honestly, it's something that's definitely worth getting used to, just rapid fire and dodging immediately out of it. When it comes to the rest of our skills, obviously we want to be using puncture to build up our combo points. You don't always need 3 combo points in order to kill stuff. Obviously, if there's a tanky elite or something, you want 3. But if you're fighting a squishier mob that's like a little crappy quill rat or whatever, you could just use 1 combo point and you'll probably be able to kill them perfectly fine. But using at least 1 is good so you get all of your buffs active, and yeah, you can be able to just nuke them down. With our other skills, our imbuements pretty much use the shadow imbuement against big packs of mobs, but not an elite. And then you save the cold imbuement for any time there's an elite and you want to be able to burst them down. Poison trap isn't great. It's kind of just there for the CC. So only use it really for the knockdown effect. You could also use a smoke grenade instead, or even shadow step like I mentioned. And obviously dash is just for the movement speed. I'll just go over some gameplay. You kind of have to actually pay attention and try a little bit more with this build compared to Twisting Blades because of the combo points, the dashing, etc. But you get used to it overall. And honestly, I would avoid any dungeon that is a slay all or any dungeon that has a ton of ghost mobs. That is going to drastically increase how long it takes you to clear stuff. When you're just generally clearing, I don't like to focus and try to kill every individual mob. I kind of like to group everything up and then get a nice old shadow imbuement and just blow it all up. Otherwise, it can take quite a long time to clear stuff because rapid fire doesn't have insane AoE. Generally, it's better for doing damage to one individual target. So if I just sit here and try to clear each individual mob, it's going to take me quite a while to clear the dungeon. So generally, I like to just speed through the dungeon and grab everything together and then shadow imbue, blow it all up. And then if there's a really tanky elite, then I will use a cold immune against that guy. Here's an elite, and boom, I just pop the cold imbuement, and then they just instantly die, and then I'm just going to walk away from these guys because I don't care. CC those guys with a poison trap, might as well, and then you kind of just blow everything up. One thing that's nice about rapid fire is you'll kind of kill enemies that are in a line, so if you kill the first guy very quickly, then everything else behind him will die because all the arrows are flying through, which feels pretty fun. This is a nice place where it's good to have a poison imbuement, or not poison imbuement, a poison trap there, because you drop it down, everything gets CC'd, and then you can kind of just blow everything up. And as you can see with the cold imbuement, as long as I have 3 combo points and I'm fighting an elite, they will probably just get 1 bursted. The damage is pretty variable because damage in this game is variable for whatever reason, but God, those guys are annoying. Sometimes if you can't apply vulnerable, enemies don't die quickly, and that's just the problem with Barber, but it's worth it, and Shadow Imbuement does apply vulnerable a lot of the time in AoE, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you ever notice you're not able to kill something, it's usually because Barber blocked the vulnerable application with X-Blade, but Shadow Imbuement does help a ton with that. I'll just nuke this elite right there, boom, little 7 milli. This is a nice place to poison trap as well, and you kind of just blow everything up with the Shadow Imbuement. Woohoo. That's pretty much it though. Rapid fire is quite a lot of fun to play with, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you do, please make sure to let me know down in the comments how much fun you've been having with it. My favorite thing about it is anytime I pop the cold imbuement and then I just absolutely annihilate an elite and I just watch all the arrows fly to them and they just instantly blow up. That's by far my favorite part about using it. And it's nice to use something that isn't Twisting Blades, but when it comes to rapid fire versus Twisting Blades, I'm going to be 100% transparent with you guys and just give you my honest opinion. I've played well over 500 to 600 hours in total just on Rogue. I've played pretty much every single build, and the unfortunate truth is just that Twisting Blades is the best core skill for Rogue for every single thing that you can do in the game. If you just watch a Twisting Blades gameplay, the clear speed is much faster, the overall damage is much faster, etc., etc. If you want to play with rapid fire, obviously feel free to. It is a lot of fun to use something different, and having a ranged playstyle is nice, but overall, Twisting Blades is just better all around. It just does more raw damage as a result of the Twisting Blades legendary. You don't have to play with combo points in order to compensate for the lack of damage because the damage is just inherently there. And as a result of that, you can play more stuff that is catered towards speed. You're able to just fly through maps and just do way more damage, and it just is a significantly faster playstyle overall. Everybody knows how good Twisting Blades is. A lot of people in my comments are like, oh, another Twisting Blades build. Well, the reason that every rogue build I post is a Twisting Blades build is just because it's the best. And I'm somebody that, I prefer to be efficient. I prefer to use what I think is the best. And generally, Twisting Blades is still by far the best skill. Obviously, you can, perform well with using the other skills. And if you're doing stuff that's like, only 3 levels higher than you or whatever, you're still going to one-shot everything using almost any rogue core skill in the game. But if you're doing stuff that's higher level than you, Twisting Blades is simply just the best skill. Sorry to burst your guys' bubble. That is my opinion. If you don't care about my opinion and you just want to use, whatever, obviously feel free to. And that's why I made this build in the first place, because rapid fire is quite a lot of fun to use. But I'm just going to keep it real with you guys. Nothing is better than Twisting Blades, and that is just an objective fact at this point. Anyways, hopefully you guys liked the video, and thanks for watching. Peace.